فين؟
حوشت بس خلاص عرفت.
ايش في مشكلة؟
خلاص مزبوط. بس شوف هنا مشكلة، عارف شيء هذه لغة
الصوت لا خلاص
نبطل شوي.
لا أخذت وانا
يسهل يمكن.
بسر قفله بارد.
مع انه اللي يسوي تربية شغال دحين قاعد يبث. ايوه مسح هذه، شوفها تمسح هذه تقول عادي
بس عندنا تطلع.
ها؟ لا شوف ما تطلع.
الساعة لا خلاص هذا البث الأول.
لا الحين طلعت.
تم استئناف البث باقي أسبوع. بس لحظة الصوت الحين ماخذه.
ترى ما هنا مايك ما في روح الصدر هناك عفوا المايك مو شغال
فكرت يعني ما صدقت اصلا
كذا بالصدر معلش عشان هناك مستعين اقفل عشان الصف عشان الصف ما هو ما تعرفون مدرب الله يعطيك العافيه لا سامي.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين.
صدق الله العظيم. كلمة رئيس قسم اللغة الإنجليزية للوزارة الأستاذ عبد الرحمن بن صالح الفريحي.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. If you don't mind, I'm going to speak English. Thank you all for being here today. You, my fellow English language teachers, English language supervisors, male and female. I would like to say some thanks to some people here. I would like to thank the Deputy Director of Education, Dr. Abdurrahman Babar, the General Director of Education Supervision, Mr. Nasser Gimli, our friends here in the Education Directorate in Al-Baha region, Mr. Saeed, and Dr. Ali, and all these friends in the Supervision Department. Also, I would like to send my thanks and gratitude to Mr. Tamir and Ms. Muna from the ladies' side, from the people from the British Council, my dear friend Mr. Tony and all his colleagues. Thank you all for being here with us, male and female English language teachers and supervisors. It's a wonderful day and a wonderful opportunity to meet a number of well-qualified, either professional teachers. I believe you heard of the title of the workshop, probably I would say 2 weeks ago, more or less. If you read the title, and this I have said in so many areas, which is the mindsets for excellence in learning. Some people wonder, what does it mean? What does it imply? What's mindsets? It's an unusual title to be given to some English language teachers. We are used to some kinds of titles that we've been searching for. We've been doing for quite a while, teaching vocabulary, teaching grammar, classroom management, and so on and so forth. When it comes to a title like mindset, so what does mindset mean? In these 2 days, we're going to tackle 2 topics. Today, we're going to talk about mindsets for excellence in learning, and tomorrow we're going to look at the work of John Hattie, which is something called visible learning. And what's visible learning? It's thing you're going to know about visible learning tomorrow. Imagine that someone will come to your classroom and tell you, I have a secret formula for you, a magic formula for you, in order to excel in your teaching. You're going to ask him a question, what do you mean by that? He will reply and tell you, I'm going to give you some techniques, some ideas, some things that you will do in your classroom to make students' learning highly effective. And also, what does that mean? It means that in our classrooms, we do things, we do them for granted. We have the belief that these things work. Some of them really work. But which is more effective, to do it or to do another thing? Let's take examples. Homework. Is homework really effective in teaching our children English or any other subject? You will know tomorrow how effective is homework. Let's talk about classroom size. The class size, if you have 20 students or 30 students or 35 students, does it affect the learning of the student? You will know tomorrow. I'm not going to spoil anything. Using teaching strategies, using different things, all these ideas can help you focus on what's highly effective. I'm not saying that these things are not effective, but some of them are highly effective. If they are used well enough, I believe we can reach better students' learning and better attainment level. Tony will be doing the training for these 2 days. And one of the good things about Tony is that he likes contributions from you, any comments. So whenever you feel that you need to say anything, to elaborate on a certain point, please do ask. If you have the mics in front of you, just ask Tony for any clarification, because if things you don't understand, don't let it pass by, just ask. It's a good opportunity to ask Tony for all these things. Also, we would like the training or the workshop to be a bit of fun. So you'll feel that the atmosphere is very friendly, have a chance to talk to each other and have a chance to say whatever you would like. Also, it's a good opportunity for you, as we say, to network, meaning that you could meet different friends with mutual interests. You have problems in your school, he has problems in his school, so you can talk to each other, discuss, talk, and enjoy this event. During the break, you can have coffee or tea and talk about the content of this workshop. I also really urge every and each one of you, male and female, that in the Ministry of Education, the way we view English language teachers all over the kingdom is that they are the agents of change. The good things that we have about English language teachers is that they have great potentials and they love the development of their teaching and their methods. Al-Bahari is something that's working on the same path, full of energy, full of good qualified teachers, well knowledge. And that's what I hope that by the end of this workshop, you will make full use of the content of this workshop and try to apply these ideas. So that's why during the weekend, I really recommend that you look at your booklets. You have 2 booklets. The first one we're going to deal with today, which is the mindsets for excellence in learning. Tomorrow you have another booklet, which is visible learning. Today we'll look at this one. Try to have the booklet with you. Try to ask questions. We're going to do some activities. Try to write whatever you would like or any comments. It's going to be helpful. Also, we're going to send you hopefully the full package. So if you want to do any further reading on the topic, we'll send you the full slides or the PDF file, and Tony will send it to you, and hopefully you will make full use of it. It's also a chance to train your colleagues in the school, not only English language teachers, but also teachers from other subjects, because the content here is also good for math teachers, science teacher, and the other subject. It's good for them because we are talking about the same students. 2 things that you need to look for when you are doing during this workshop today. 2 terms that you will be confronted with. Number 1, which is called fixed mindsets. Number 2 is called the growth mindset. So what do we mean by these 2 terms? If we could understand these 2 terms, I believe that we can change students from one state to another state. At the end, I would like to thank you all for being here with us, and please enjoy this workshop. I know the content is good. I know it can make a difference, and I really believe it could make a difference. Your teaching shouldn't be the same starting from next week. It should change. You should consider these points. At the end of I'd like to thank you all for being here with us. Thank for the lovely people of the Lomada region. Thank you, Mr. Tamir, the head of English, for the whole section. Thank you, Ms. Muna, for also organizing the ladies' side, and hopefully you will enjoy the rest of this workshop. Thank you very much.
شكرا أستاذ عبد الرحمن. الآن كلمة المساعد للشؤون التعليمية بالبنين الدكتور عبد الخالق حنش.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سعادة رئيس قسم اللغة الإنجليزية في الإدارة العامة للإشراف التربوي في مقام الوزارة الأستاذ عبد الرحمن صالح الريف. سعادة الخبير التدريب مستر توني سوينز أخي مدير الإشراف التربوي الأستاذ أحمد حامي، أخي رئيس قسم اللغة الإنجليزية في الإدارة العامة الأستاذ تامر، إخواني التربويين المشرفين ومعلمين، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته، وأسعد الله صباحكم وطيب جميع أوقاتكم بكل خير. بداية باسم سعادة المدير العام وباسمكم جميعا وباسم كافة أعضاء الأسرة التربوية في الإدارة العامة للتعليم في منطقة الباحة، يسرنا أن نرحب بضيفينا الكريمين متمنين لهما طيب الإقامة في منطقة الباحة والتوفيق في أداء مهمتهما وتحقيق أهدافهما. إخواني الكرام، كلنا ندرك أهمية تعلم اللغة الإنجليزية في هذا العصر الذي باتت فيه اللغة الإنجليزية هي لغة العصر، هي اللغة الأكثر انتشارا واوسع استخداما على مستوى العالم، هي اللغه المعتمده في كثير من المؤتمرات والندوات العالميه، هي لغه العلوم في مختلف مجالاتها بلا شك، هي لغه التقنيه والتكنولوجيا الحديثه، هي لغه التجاره والاقتصاد، السياحه، السياسه. على مستوى الفرد اتقان اللغه الانجليزيه على قدر كبير من الاهميه، هي تمنح الفرد المتقن للغه الانجليزيه فرصة الانفتاح على الثقافات العالمية المتعددة والاستفادة من الحضارات المتنوعة. كذلك تساعد بلا شك المتعلم على فرصة الاستفادة من مصادر المعرفة والمعلومات العالمية. من هذا المنطلق أدركت معظم دول العالم أهمية تعليم اللغة الإنجليزية، حتى أصبحت هذه اللغة حاضرة في مناهجها وفي تعليمها منذ المراحل التعليمية المبكرة، بل إن بعض الدول اعتمدت اللغة الإنجليزية لغة للتعلم والتعليم. إخواني الكرام، في هذا المقام لن نقدم نصائح لكم فيما يتعلق بالطرق المثلى لتعلم اللغة الإنجليزية أو الطرق والاستراتيجيات الحديثة في تدريسها، فهذا مجال أنتم رجاله وهذا ميدان أنتم فرسانه، ولكنني أؤكد على أمرين: أن هناك حاجة ماسة، وأيضا أن هناك فرصة سانحة. هناك حاجة ماسة بالفعل قائمة وظاهرة وواضحة لتعلم اللغة الإنجليزية، وذلك بفعل عصر العولمة الذي نعيشه، وكذلك ما نشهده من تقارب مستمر بين الدول بفعل التقنيات الحديثة. وهناك أيضا فرصة قائمة تتمثل في الرغبة الأكيدة لدى كثير من أبنائنا الطلاب وأولياء أمورهم في تعلم وإتقان اللغة الإنجليزية. أمام هذا التحدي وأمام هذه الفرصة بالتأكيد الزملاء المعنيون بتعليم اللغة الإنجليزية مدعوون لمواكبة هذا الأمر من خلال العمل على تطوير قدراتهم وتنمية مهاراتهم لتجويد أدائهم التدريسي وتحسين مخرجاتهم، وبالتالي إعداد أجيال من أبنائنا الطلاب متمكنة من اللغة الإنجليزية ومهاراتها استماعا وتحدثا وقراءة وكتابة. أرحب مجددا بسعادة رئيس قسم اللغة الإنجليزية بمقام الوزارة، كما أرحب بسعادة خبير التدريب، وأشكر لهما سلفا ما سيقدم من جهد في هذه الورشة، والتي أنا على ثقة بأنها كما هي متميزة في عنوانها ستكون كذلك متميزة في محتواها ومتميزة في أسلوب تنفيذها وكذلك في مخرجاتها ونتائجها وثمرتها إن شاء الله تعالى في الميدان التربوي. كما أشكر أخي مدير الإشراف التربوي وكافة زملائي بإدارة الإشراف التربوي تحديدا قسم اللغة الإنجليزية الأستاذ تامر وزملائي على جهودهم في الإعداد والتنظيم لهذه الورشة. أشكركم أيضا أنتم الإخوان الكرام على حرصكم على الحضور في هذه الورشة على الرغم من صعوبة الأجواء في هذا اليوم، لكن هذا يدل على حرصكم على الاستفادة من هذه الورشة، وبالتالي فأنتم بالتأكيد مدعوون إلى التفاعل والمشاركة الإيجابية من خلال هذه الورشة والحرص على نقل ما تكتسبونه من معارف ومعلومات ومهارات إلى الميدان التربوي حتى نجده بإذن الله تعالى واقعا ملموسا وينعكس إيجابا على أبنائنا والطلاب وإتقانهم لهذه اللغة المهمة. ختاما نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يحفظ علينا ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا، وأن يحفظ لنا قادتنا وولاة أمرنا، وأن يديم على هذا الوطن الحبيب نعم الأمن والأمان والاستقرار والازدهار، وأن يحفظ كذلك جنودنا البواسل المرابطين على الحد الجنوبي دفاعا عن ديننا وعن وطننا، وأن يؤيدهم بنصره المبين. أسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى لكم التوفيق والسداد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's fantastic to be with you here. I've heard from Abdul Rahman that teachers in this part of Saudi Arabia are brilliant. So I know you're all brilliant teachers, wonderful teachers, and always trying new things, which is what we need to do all the time in education, is to keep trying to make or do different things, because we never can reach a point where we can say we've already got to the maximum we can do. There's always more that we can achieve. And that's really, I think, what these 2 days are about. For you and I together, for all of us together, to consider some things that potentially make an enormous difference to the learning of students. And of course that's what we're really fundamentally trying to do in education, is to try to make their learning as good as it can possibly be. Would you agree? Yeah? Could I just check before we go further that the ladies in the other room, and welcome to all of you of course, the ladies in the other room and the gentlemen here, can I just check that the ladies can hear and see the presentation at the moment? So if one of the ladies could pick up the microphone, if you don't mind, and just tell us that you can hear and everything's satisfactory in the other room.
Yes, Mr. Tony, everything is okay.
Fantastic. thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And if I could say for all of you, as Abdul Rahman has already mentioned, if there's any point at which you want to ask a question, please do. Ladies in the other room, of course, just communicate with us through the microphone and so on. That would be fantastic. And you've all got these wonderful little gadgets in front of you, so you can all ask questions through these, yeah? Okay, so we're going to look today at mindsets. We're going to break, by the way, because I always know people like to know when breaks are, right? So we're going to break at 10:15, and we're going to have a short break, and then we'll come back, and then we're going to go through for the rest of the session until, you know, just later on this morning, okay? So we've got two sessions, one until 10:15, have a break, and then we've got the second bit. And I really hope that what we do today is going to have a real influence on your teaching, that it will make a big influence. I really hope so. Also, as Abdul Rahman said, the mindsets that we're looking at today and visible learning tomorrow, and by the way, both of these are in the booklet that you got, so both today and tomorrow are inside the booklet that you've been given. So please bring the booklet along tomorrow if you could, because it will be important for you to write a few things down in the booklet, both for today and tomorrow. We're going to look today at mindsets and then tomorrow at visible learning. And we'll see that these two things actually converge, they come together in a very powerful way, I taught for 20 years in schools in England. Then I worked for the Department for Education in England on developing professional development for teachers in England. So I worked for a number of years with the Department for Education, and then I decided to venture out and do my own training. So I've now for quite a number of years done training with teachers, with head teachers, with many people in different schools, and in fact in many different countries. I've had an immense pleasure of coming to Saudi Arabia now 16 times. So this is my 16th time in Saudi Arabia. I've never been here before, so it's a wonderful, wonderful pleasure to come to this region. I tell you the only thing I don't like about it, should I tell you? This weather. I feel like I'm back in England. I think I brought all the fog and the rain from England to Saudi Arabia. I can't believe it. But it's wonderful nevertheless. It's such a wonderful place. And so I'm just so happy to be with you. So we're going to look again at mindsets, at visible learning, and see the power of these things to really affect what we do in education. These are two things now, if I give you an idea in England, that have been really very influential in a number of schools. I wouldn't say it's kind of universal, or it's not within England, it's not spread through everywhere, but a number of schools now are embracing the idea of mindsets and also the idea of visible learning. So schools in England now, and indeed schools in many other countries, are actually taking on board these ideas of mindsets and visible learning. When we look at this today, what I'm going to do is to look at this in four different ways for mindsets, because it's interesting. Some research by a lady called Bernice McCarthy actually tells us that students ask themselves 4 questions in the classroom. So the students that you teach will ask themselves 4 questions as you're teaching them. And the questions are very simple. And I'm going to go through them because we're going to use these questions to try to work through mindsets today, to go through some fundamental things. And the questions that the students ask themselves are this. This is called the 4-MAT system, developed, as I say, by Bernice McCarthy, who's an educationalist. And she says that the first question we ask ourselves when we're learning something new is, why am I learning this? So the first question is, why? We often want to know why, and many people want to know why. We all want to know why we're learning something, but for some people it's absolutely fundamental. And I suggest to you that actually when you look at lessons, think about your own lessons, or anybody else that you see. If you're a supervisor looking in at lessons as well, or you're in a classroom teaching lessons, do you always start with why? And I would ask you to think about this, because it's a very interesting thing, because unless the students have a clear indication of why it is that they're learning something, they might not fully engage with the learning. In some ways, it's like if you want to buy something new. It's no good somebody coming to you and saying, here is something for you, I want you to buy it. You want to know, why should I buy it? Why should I buy this thing? So your first question you really want to ask yourself, I think, in classrooms is, why am I teaching this? Now, I know that the easy thing is to say, it's in the curriculum, right? But that's not good enough for many students. Because many students will want to think, yeah, but what's in it for me? Why should I be learning this other than to pass an exam? Which is good, it's fine doing that with the exam, it's a reason obviously, but it won't engage every student. So we start with why. And today, what we're going to do is to say, why are mindsets important? So the first thing I'm going to do with you is to cover why mindsets are important. Because unless you believe that mindsets are important, you're not going to know what they're about. You're not going to want to know what they're about. We need to be clear about why they're important. And then, of course, we go on to the second bit, which is what. So what are mindsets? I want to convince you, first of all, that they're important. I want to give you some evidence to suggest why mindsets are important. Then we go into the what's. What are mindsets? What actually are they? What is it about? This word, which is Professor Carol Dweck from America, has developed this idea of mindsets, this concept of mindsets, and really based many years, over 30 years, actually working on this. Professor Carol Dweck. So we're going to look at what mindsets are, what Carol Dweck tells us mindsets are all about. The third thing then we need to know, or as a learner wants to know, is then how do we use it? Whatever it is that they're learning, like English for you as English specialists, the student will want to know, how do I apply this knowledge? Because if we can't apply it, it's just a kind of theory, it's an idea, but it's got no absolute relevance. And therefore, what I want to do with you today is to show you, give you some ideas about how we can use mindsets. You can use it when you go back into your schools, how you can use it. And then the fourth part of this circle, the fourth quadrant, is this. It's if. And the if is giving you the opportunity then, and for you to think, how can you use it in your own way? So it's what if you like. It's saying, what if I use this information in a different way, my own individual way in my school? So it gives you the creativity to be able to use it. Now, if obviously you've come along today, and if you go away with nothing else, that actually is very important. Because if you think about lessons, of structuring a lesson by saying, I start off with why, then I go into the detail, the what, then I actually get them to understand how they can apply it. And then the fourth thing is to give them the opportunity to think about it imaginatively, creatively, in their own way. Then lessons will tend to be very good, or they have a good structure. Okay? So we're going to look at each of these different segments. We're going to start off though, taking even one step back from that. Because the first thing that we want to do today is for you to think about what your mindset is, what your own mindset is. Now we're going to do this through, I'm going to give you 16 statements. 16 statements. For example, one of the statements will be this: you have a certain amount of intelligence and you can't really do much to change it. This is one of the statements that Carol Dweck uses to kind of work with people to find out what their present mindset is. Now you can see on the screen or in your booklets this, and what you've got to do is to simply assess in your own mind what you think about this statement. It refers obviously to intelligence. And what you've got to do is to say, do I strongly agree with that statement? If you do, you tick that box. If on the other hand you go right to the other side and strongly disagree, obviously you tick that box. You might be somewhere in between thinking about intelligence. You might think that you kind of agree but don't strongly agree with it, or it could be somewhere in between. So the first 8 questions, or not questions, statements I should say, the first 8 statements are about intelligence. If you turn over the page, you'll see that there are another 8 statements, and these are about talents. Now these are things we talk a lot about in life, and in terms of often in schools, of course. We're talking about intelligence of students, aren't we? Yeah. We talk about the intelligence of students, right? We also sometimes maybe talk about the talent that some students have. And in fact, you've got in Saudi Arabia, we have in England, we often talk about the strand which is called the gifted and talented strand. And in Saudi Arabia, it's gifted and creative. It's just slightly different wording, but we talk about the gifted and creative. Through Mawhiba, as many of you will probably know about Mawhiba in Saudi Arabia, the organisation which is set up in Saudi to actually look at what's called the gifted and creative students, right? The students that we might believe, excel in somewhere, right? So, these statements, the first 8 statements, are about intelligence. And it is about your belief about intelligence. It's what you think intelligence is. They might seem at times repetitive, and it's meant to be that way. There's only slightly different wording between some of the statements, but it's meant to be that way. And it's what you believe at the moment, not what you think you should believe or what other people believe, but what you believe. It's about your belief at the moment, right, on intelligence. And if you ask me, what do I mean by intelligence? What I'm going to say to you is, we're not going to have a great intellectual debate about the meaning of intelligence, because that would take us all day, and it would probably many, many days to look at. But rather, it's what you think intelligence is. It's what your thought is about intelligence. When you use the word intelligence, right, about a student being intelligent, what is it that you think in your mind? So, you're referring to your own kind of meaning, not somebody else's meaning, not the dictionary, what the dictionary says, not what some educationalist has said. It's what your meaning is in terms of intelligence. So the first 8 statements, as I say, are about intelligence. The second 8 statements are about talent. And again, just give your own interpretation for this. Don't think what anybody else, so it doesn't matter about what anybody else is saying or writing. And it isn't a test, of course, this. It's just to give us a sense, as we begin this little journey and adventure that we're going on today, it's just a little sense for you to think about what is your belief at the moment about intelligence, what's your belief about talent. And we'll see that these beliefs are very, very important for us. We'll see later on. But to start off, we're going to do this. Now, I'm just going to say to you, could you just spend 2 minutes on this? So don't agonize, don't think too deeply about each question. Give your instinctive response. Just give what your first impression is, rather than some, deep intellectual thing that you're going into. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes from now, trying to do all 16 of the statements. So answer your responses to all 16 statements. Okay, so we should just about coming to the end of that. We've had 1 or 2 minutes for you to do it. As I say, I'll give you a little bit longer, but don't think too much about it, just give you your instinctive impression. Okay, can I just see, if you wouldn't mind, please, if you could, and if you wouldn't mind, gentlemen here, and of course ladies in the other room, if you could just see if you've nearly finished this. If I could just see with the gentleman here, how many of you have done the 16 now? If you just put your hands up, please, if you wouldn't mind, if you've done all 16. You've done all 16, sir? You've done all 16? Yep, okay. So, I think we've just about everybody there, and I hope the ladies in the other room have done this as well, right? So we've gone through the 16 questions. Can I ask you now, if you could, with your pencil please, if you could, beside each question, I'm just going to ask you if you can write one of two letters. And the two letters are either a letter, capital letter F, right, F. F stands for fixed, right, so F, capital F, or a letter G, which stands for growth. And what I would like you to do is please, beside each of the numbers, 1, 2, 3, etc., I'm just going to ask you to write one of these two letters. Let me tell you what it is. So beside question number 1, or statement number 1, can you write F? Just do this now if you could, please. Beside number 1, write F. Beside number 2, write F. And number 3, write G. Number 4, F. 5, G. Number 6, F. Number 7, G. And number 8, G. So you should have 4 Fs and 4 Gs there, right? 4 Fs, 4 Gs. Now, if you turn to question number, or statement number 9, could you write F beside 10, F, number 11, G, 12, F, 13, G, 14, F, 15, G, 16, G. And again, you should have 4 Fs, 4 Gs. Is that correct? Yeah? Okay. Now, what do they mean, F and G? As I said, F stands for fixed. And you might want to write that as a little key or a little code somewhere on the page. F stands for fixed, F-I-X-E-D, and G stands for growth, G-R-O-W-T-H. Now, the questions that you've got, or those statements, are statements that have been given by Carol Dweck to thousands of people. And modified statements like those have been given to children. And what they are trying to do, these statements, is trying to get for people to, first of all, reflect on what their present belief system is about intelligence and then about talent. So, what this means is this. Every one of the F statements, if you look at the first statement, for example, you have a certain amount of intelligence and you really can't do much to change it. If you've put strongly agree with that, then it will mean that you have a strong belief that intelligence is fixed, okay? If you strongly agree with it. On the other hand, if you strongly disagree with it, you will be moving towards a belief that intelligence can change dramatically. You know, you strongly believe it can change. So for each of the F statements, the more you are towards the left-hand side of strongly agree, the more you will have a fixed mindset in terms of a fixed belief about intelligence. The more you are over to the right-hand side, the more you will be going into a growth belief system. With the G statements, it's the opposite way around, isn't it? Because the G statements, like statement number 3, for example, no matter who you are, you can significantly change your intelligence level. Now, if you strongly agree with that, you are into intelligence can grow. Your belief is intelligence can grow. But if you strongly disagree with it, you're going more into the fixed thing of thinking intelligence is fixed. Now, these concepts of fixed mindset, growth mindset, are very important. Perhaps more important than you might possibly have believed until we started to look at this today. Because Carol Dweck's research on this shows that the way that children, students, young people, and in fact us as adults as well, or if we're thinking about the students that we teach, the way they think about their intelligence will strongly influence the way that they learn. So, this first thing that we've done is for you to think a little bit about your own position, your own thought process with regard to intelligence. Now, you'll see on the slide here that I've written on here, how do you view yourself? It's like holding a mirror up to yourself. How do you view yourself? And by the way, whenever it says exercise, you will have in your booklets a place where you can write down a few things if you want to. There's a space for each of these exercises if you want to write down something of your own thoughts and comments. Now, I've used the word incremental and entity. And these, in a way, describe exactly the same thing as an incremental person is somebody who believes that intelligence rather, can develop bit by bit by bit. Incremental is that little bit of, steps, isn't it? 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps. That your intelligence can actually grow. Incremental means that. Entity is like a whole. It's a whole thing. So, incremental is the same as growth mindset. Entity is like a fixed mindset. So the words incremental and entity, if you want to just make a note of it if you wish, incremental means growth. Entity means fixed. So your self-theory about your intelligence, because it is like a theory that we have in our heads. And what's interesting is that teachers all around the world, Saudi Arabia, in England, in Australia, in America, in Europe, all over the place, in Africa, teachers will talk about intelligence, right? We all talk about intelligence, but we might have slightly different meanings of what we think of as intelligence. But we'll have an idea in our minds of intelligence. And then the next thing is, we have an idea in our minds as to whether we think it's fixed or whether it can grow. Right? We all have some idea about this, as you've expressed. Now, it's interesting not sure exactly how many people we've got here, say 100 or something like this sitting here with the gentlemen, and maybe something of the same, I'm not sure, with the ladies as well. Say we've got 200 people here today. I think it would be surprising if all 200 people had the same idea about intelligence, right? You'll probably, with the person sitting next to you, you could have a debate about what your thoughts are about intelligence, whether it's fixed or whether it can grow. You've got, therefore, a self-theory. It's about, yourself, and it's also, obviously, it's about other people as well, about intelligence. And this is what Carol Dweck talks about, our self-theory. And she says that our self-theory about intelligence and how it applies to us significantly affects our ability to learn. So I want you just for a moment, if you could, with the person sitting next to you, right, in 2s or even 3s if you wish, but find, with the person, if you're not sitting next to somebody, move to somebody next to you. So with the person sitting next to you, could you just spend a moment or a minute or two talking about what your present view is? Are you, from your responses that you've given, are you more of a person who thinks more that intelligence and talent as well, but if you want to look at them separately, in terms of intelligence, let's say, are you fixed in terms of your view on intelligence? Do you think it's fixed? Or are you right over the other side? Do you think that intelligence can absolutely grow? Or are you somewhere in between? Okay? You see what I'm saying? So with the person next to you, share your present beliefs about this, and also maybe think about, where did that come from? Have you read something? Have you, did you pick it up from school? Did you pick it up from your parents, what you believe? Where did that come from? And has it stayed the same as well from when you were at school? Has your view on intelligence stayed the same, or has it changed as you become a teacher? Has it stayed the same, or has it modified? So could you please just talk to the person next to you, spend some really useful, valuable time talking to the person next to you about those things. Okay, over to you folks. Right, thank you for spending that time doing that. I hope you found that interesting, just to find out, you know, what your views are compared to the person sitting next to you. And if we compared everybody's views, it would be extraordinary. I just want to ask you, if you could, if you wouldn't mind, just telling me any thoughts on your interpretation at the moment of intelligence and talent. Would anybody like to give me a view on what you presently think? Is it fixed? Is it growth? What is it like? And ladies, of course, if you could please, if there's anybody who wants to give a comment from the ladies, please do. Any gentlemen, if we could just put up hands if anybody wants to give a statement or a comment on what you've just been talking about. Did you differ in your views, for example, with the person next to you? Did anybody do that? Anybody like to say, if you want to show, just with a microphone, I don't know how you just switch it on or something. Just tell us what your thoughts were. Were they different, were they?
Yes.
Excuse me?
Oh, sorry, ladies. Yeah.
My name is Aisha.
Thank you.
I think that we should be incremental learning. I think that the learning is an ongoing process. As we become learner, as we become older, we become more learner, and life gives us lessons and more experience. So I think it will be an ongoing process.
Thank you.
This is my idea.
Yeah, thank you. So I understand what you said there. You said, I think one of the things, just to be clear, you said as we get older we learn more. I think you said that, yeah?
Excuse me, yes?
Yeah, I think you said that as we get older, as we grow, we learn more. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And does that mean that because we learn more, because maybe the amount that we learn is different from what people might say is intelligence, because we can learn facts and figures and stuff, but does our intelligence change? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that intelligence is something that will be changed, but changed and improved, but I think that talent, it's something that will be fixed.
More fixed, right. So talent is more fixed, do you think, than intelligence, right?
God give persons talent or different from the others.
Yeah.
So it will be something fixed, and the intelligence, it will be something that will be growing up, changed by the life and experience and lessons.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that. And it'd be interesting. I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, by the way.
My name is Aisha.
Aisha. Thank you, Aisha. And
Thanks.
As you go through this morning, Aisha, and for everybody, ladies and gentlemen here, if you could just see whether your thoughts and beliefs, if you like, and just your whole concept, if you like, of what you think about intelligence and talent might change. I don't know. It might not as we go through this morning. But thank you, Aisha. That's great. Thank you. Gentlemen, sir, if you were going to say, please.
I was going to say that out of the debates we have concluded that we have different views of the word intelligence. Some relate intelligence to learning. So that's why they say it is fixed.
Yeah.
I think it can grow, and humans are capable of changing their mindsets.
Right. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Sorry, your name is? Abdul Rahman.
Yeah.
Right. Abdul Rahman, thank you. And that's an interesting one, Abdul Rahman, because I think you said something similar to Aisha there, in the sense that some people think that intelligence is kind of related directly with learning, isn't it? And of course there is a link there. But we could probably debate for a long time what is the distinction between intelligence and learning, and it's kind of interesting, isn't it, to look at these things. Anybody else got another comment? Any ladies who have another comment at all?
Yes.
Yes.
My name is Hind.
Hind, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think intelligence level is fixed.
Yeah.
But talented is can be developed.
Ah, right, okay, that's interesting, isn't it? Because your view is perhaps slightly different to Aisha's, yeah?
Yeah, I think also intelligence can be, different and widely. For example, I agree with the gentleman and Aisha with when I grow, I learn more, I develop, and the intelligence go wider.
Yeah.
I got the social intelligence, I got cosmic intelligence. It comes, more wise.
Yeah. Thank you, Hen. That's really interesting. Yeah. So we get these different views, don't we, that we have as educators. As educators, as people who are shaping in many ways the minds of the young people that we're with, we can have different views about what intelligence is like. Hen there was saying that she feels that intelligence is more fixed, but talent is more flexible and variable. Aisha was saying that she thinks intelligence is more variable and perhaps talent is more God-given and fixed. Abdul Rahman was saying that it can be grown, and he was talking about the link between intelligence and learning as well, and all of this. Okay, so these are interesting ideas, and they're pretty fundamental actually, because billions of children are being educated around the world. I think the world has 7 billion people on it, plus 7 billion plus people on it now. So there will be, of those 7 billion people, goodness knows how many are going to school, but let's say it's 1 billion or 2 billion, I'm not sure what it is, but there are lots of children around the world being educated, and it would be interesting if we had some sort of idea about what their belief about intelligence, does it affect their learning? And guess what? It does. So their very belief about intelligence will affect their ability to learn. Now, I'm just going to go on a little bit more with this then, and just to give you the first thing of the format system now we're going to look at. And the first thing of the format system is, why then should we be bothered about looking at mindsets? And why should it be, particularly, I'm going to tell you that Professor Carol Dweck's work tells us that the more a student has a growth mindset, now remember, growth mindset means the student believes that intelligence can grow, talent can grow, they can grow all the time in their ability, their talent, their intelligence. The more they believe that, the better they will be able to learn, which is a striking thing. Now, of course, later on, what I'm going to do is come on to showing you how we can actually support students to move towards having a growth mindset if, at the end of the day, at the end of this morning, you think it's worthwhile. So you have to make up your mind about whether it's worthwhile. I hope every single one of you is going to think this is worthwhile. And then we're going to look at how we can bring students over to have a growth mindset. Right. Just going to step back a bit from this for a moment, but relate what I'm talking about to fleas. Now that seems a bit strange, but fleas are not very pleasant little characters actually. They are, you know what fleas are, yeah? The things that dogs can have, fleas on them, animals. Actually, human beings can have fleas on them as well. And they're not very nice because they're very irritating. They make you itch, right? Now, I'm not putting down students here, right? But I'm going to say to us here that students can sometimes behave a bit like fleas. I know they can be irritating at times, but they can also be very nice, of course, as well, and great. But I want you to think about the way that a classroom of students can be a little bit like fleas. We've got these little characters, these little fleas in our classroom. We might have one that is actually pretty lively here, jumping around. You get these little characters, don't you, in any classroom. But more than that, I want us to look at the video. And I just want to show you a video if I can for a moment. So bear with me whilst I just switch the screen here if I can, and show you a little video in a moment. So if I can just, let's have a look. Just bear with me a moment. Right. Okay, so I'm going to just show you this video here of some fleas. And it's an experiment that was done when some fleas were put into a jam jar, and then the jam jar was sealed for 3 days. And then they came back, the experimenter, scientists came back and took the lid off the jar so that the fleas could jump out if they wanted to. Okay? Does that make sense? We'll have a look and see what happens.
Inside the jar, and the lid is then sealed. They are left undisturbed for 3 days. Then, when the jar is opened, the fleas will not jump out. In fact, the fleas will never jump higher than the level set by the lid. Their behaviour is now set for the rest of their lives. And when these fleas reproduce, their offspring will automatically follow their example.
Right, I'm just going to turn that back if I could, so we could watch that once more with a bit more sound.
Training fleas requires a glass jar with a lid. The fleas are placed inside the jar, and the lid is then sealed. They are left undisturbed for 3 days. Then, when the jar is opened, the fleas will not jump out. In fact, the fleas will never jump higher than the level set by the lid. Their behaviour is now set for the rest of their lives. And when these fleas reproduce, their offspring will automatically follow their example.
If you can imagine what this was used as an advert for. What advert was this used for? It might surprise you what it was. Okay, now, I don't know whether you like analogies. You know, that's a nice word, isn't it, analogy, when we're trying to explain one thing in terms of something else with an analogy, don't we? Yeah? What's the analogy between those fleas in a jar and maybe education in many classrooms around the world? Not with your classrooms particularly, but it could be as well. Is there any analogy between that and education, potentially in classrooms? Now, could I ask you, if you wouldn't mind, just with the person next to you again, see what you think, and then I'll ask for a few comments. So what's the analogy between those fleas in a jar and children in classrooms?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'll come to you in 1 second if that would be okay. I'll just let people have a think and then I'll come to you if that's okay, please. Thank you. Okay, folks, so, once again, I'll come to the ladies first. because I know one of the ladies was going to give a comment. So if I come to you first, what do you see as an analogy between the fleas in the jam jar and a classroom of students? So ladies, what would you say?
Yes, please.
Yes. Your name is what, sorry?
Maha.
Maha. Thank you, Maha.
I think students inside the class like under some limits or lines or borders done by the teacher. So they are like fleas in the jar. And the teacher is not creative, I mean.
Yeah.
When the teacher is old-fashioned, classic teacher, in his methods, his ways.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting, isn't it? That, you know, the students, if the teacher, I think one of the big things you've said there is the teacher is really influential. Is that correct? Ladies? The teacher is really influential.
Yes, the teacher is not creative, not follow the new methods of teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. That's great. Any gentleman like to give a comment as well? Please, sir, if you could just turn your microphone on. It's great.
I think a teacher must take his students outside the box by developing their ideas and developing himself first and get advanced.
Thank you very much indeed. Brilliant. Thank you. Anybody else got any comments? Ladies or gentlemen? Come to you in a moment if I could. Just take to see if there's anybody else got a comment. Any ladies got another comment? Gentleman here, please.
This is Nate. I agree and disagree with the fleas experiment.
Okay.
Well, first of all, yes, it is the teacher who tags students to certain types of intelligences that are fixed, that in the future would affect them to think of themselves as fixed. And that would in turn make them less likely to be growth mindset. However, students are not fleas, and there is hope. And if by any chance a student gets out of that fixed mindset, teacher and fixed mindset, school and fixed mindset, curriculum and fixed mindset, classroom, there is hope because humans are genetically engineered to be growth mindsets.
Right. Thank you so much. That's a great comment. Thank you very much for all of your comments as well. Yeah, and I loved what you said there about there is hope. Yeah? Because definitely, of course, we're more complex than fleas, definitely. And I like what you said, genetically kind of engineered, or whatever you said, I think it was engineered, to be growth mindset. And that's a really interesting point, because when you look at little children, they are growth mindset. They are growth mindset. Little children, they think anything is possible. And somehow they become very fixed, or a lot of children can, not everybody of course, but a lot of children can become fixed mindsets for a variety of reasons. So thank you for those comments. I just want to, we're talking here about the why, remember. Why are mindsets important to look at? Now on the screen, you probably see now, there is a graph, and the graph illustrates a particular experiment that Carol Dweck and some of her colleagues, and other people working on this with her, and looked at. And if you can imagine, the way that this experiment was done is that many students were given a test. They're given a test. This is in America, and it's around about the age when they're 11-year-old. All right. So when they're 11-year-old, they've all taken this test. It's around about 11, a maths test, and you can see that a particular group of students all got a maths result of around about just below 74.5. Can you see that? At the very start of the graph, right? So they've all started off with a maths score of 74.5. You might say, well, how on earth have they all got the same score? Well, many students didn't have that score, but they've chosen a group of students, a lot of students, from the people who've taken the maths test, that have all had the same score, 74.5, right? So you might have, I don't know, it could have been thousands of students taking the maths test, but from that they decided to choose, doesn't matter what the score is, but just a group of students that have got the same score. And in this case, they've chosen the students who got 74.5. Now what they then did was to track, in other words, to look at the students over the next 2 years. Now these students are transitioning. They're going from their elementary school system. Let's say this was in Saudi Arabia. So they're going from their elementary system, yeah, that you've got in Saudi, yeah, into, what do they go into in 11-year-old? The intermediate. So they're going from elementary to intermediate. Here, it's called junior high, right? So they're going to junior high school, but for you, it's elementary to intermediate. Now that is a critical time for many students when they're going from that transition from one school to another school. It can be quite a difficult time. And what they did was to interview and analyse these students by using questions similar to the questions that you've been given today about fixed, what they thought about intelligence, what they thought about talent. And they've been given lots of questions, if you like the questions that you've got, and also interviewed to kind of make sure that the people doing the research could divide the group, divide those students that have all got the same math score into fixed mindset or growth mindset. Are you with me? So they've been then, if you like, tested further beyond the maths to just see whether they have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And the results are quite amazing, because when those students are being tracked over the next 2 years, you can see, I hope, if the colours are clear enough, that the graph that's going up is growth mindset. So those students with a growth mindset have actually improved their maths score. The students who've got a fixed mindset actually shows a decline. And there's a gap essentially between the growth mindset and the fixed mindset students after 2 years. Only based upon whether they had a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. This is very interesting because, if you like, at the beginning of those 2 years, they've all been assessed to have the same, you could say, intelligence, couldn't you? You know, how do we measure intelligence? Often in school we measure it by their examination results. At the age of 11, they have got, in some respects, you could say they have the same intelligence. But something strange has happened over 2 years. Based only on their mindsets, some of them, the growth mindset, have actually increased their intelligence, if you like. Their scores have gone up. The fixed mindset has gone down. Quite incredible. Quite incredible. Now, this is only one piece of information that I'm going to share with you today. We could do lots of different things, but this experiment's been repeated many times and shown very, very similar results. That the mindset affects their ability to learn. Because if learning is about learning, therefore being able to do better in examinations, etc., they have clearly shown that growth mindset have learned more. They've learned more, they've achieved more over the next 2 years. Quite astonishing. But another thing I want to just mention to you is the fact that mindsets are not just about academic attainment. I'm sure as educators in your schools in Saudi Arabia that you've got here, I'm sure many people believe that academic attainment, however important it might be, is not the only thing that we're trying to do to help students. Because helping them meet life's challenges, I'm sure you would think is important. Would you? Would you? Yeah. So that when students leave the school, if they can overcome challenges in life better, then we will have helped them enormously. The academic stuff that they do might help them perhaps in their career and of course their fulfillment in life. However, other things like meeting life's challenges are important as well. Research or analysis of people in the UK is that, and I looked at this just before I came over to Saudi this time, is that 1 in 4 people in the UK this year, like next year and the year before and so on, 1 in 4 people in the UK, surprisingly, shockingly really, will suffer some sort of psychological issue this year. This might be, I've put depression there, it could be anxiety, where they need to have some, perhaps to go and see a doctor to get some support. Now, I don't know what the numbers are in Saudi Arabia for this, but I would, I would assume that we're not too different. We're all kind of more, kind of the same, aren't we really? So whether it's in England or Saudi Arabia, your figure might be less, I don't know, than 1 in 4, I don't know. But the point is that we all meet challenges in life. If you haven't met a challenge in your life, I congratulate you and I think that's wonderful, right? I think you're blessed. But everybody has challenges, don't we? We have challenges because unfortunately things happen in the family. We might have a bereavement, which is a challenge that faces us. Somebody ill in the family, we might be ill. It could be something to do with work issues that we have a challenge, stress at work or whatever. It could be a whole range of things. But the point is that we will meet challenges, and so will the students who are leaving your schools, won't they? As they go through life, they are going to meet challenges. And the research on this, again, is very interesting, because what Karen Beck says very clearly is that if you've got a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, either way, you're not going to, it's not going to give you immunity from challenges, right? Because whether you've got a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, you are going to meet challenge, right? So that's not going to help us in terms of, because we have a growth mindset, we don't have challenges. Challenges will come along. And also, whether you've got a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, sometimes the challenge might be such that it can send us into a sense of not feeling very good. We might, possibly some people might get into depression and so on and so forth. However, what's interesting from her research is that the growth mindset people tend to not go into, if we look at something like depression, as much as fixed mindset. So there isn't as many people with a growth mindset who go into depression. But secondly, if they enter into a really difficult situation and get into a phase where they're really into a stage of depression or something like that, then those with a growth mindset have the ability to get out of it far more effectively. Because they believe that with their growth mindset, that challenge can be overcome. But they have the capacity within them to meet challenges. It's not just about the intellectual stuff, it's about meeting life's challenges. Growth mindset people, on the other hand, often think in absolute terms. And when they get into a stage of depression, let's say, they think, well, what can I do about it? I can't change this. This is just the way it is for me. I can't do anything to change it. So, interestingly, very importantly, I think, because education isn't just about academic attainment, the research will show that having a growth mindset will help people in very broad ways. It helps them with successful relationships, as I put on the slide. So people with a growth mindset, in a sense, will be able to develop better relationships, be able to be happier in life, be able to, it has links with what people talk about as being emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is about understanding yourself, managing yourself, understanding other people, managing, leading other people. So emotional intelligence is enhanced if somebody has a growth mindset. Which of those two things, the intellectual stuff or the more kind of broad social stuff?
Excuse me?
Yes, please.
Yes, Mr. Swanson.
Yeah.
The consistency that you show in the previous slide, in the math academy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. What's the reason of this consistency?
Right, so let me just go on to that, back to that, if I could.
Yeah.
Yes, so on this graph here, yeah?
Yeah, you mentioned that there is a fixed mindset and growth mindset.
Yeah.
What's the reason of this consistency?
Okay, well that's a very interesting point actually, and I think, you know, we'll come on to that in a moment in a sense, when I describe the next thing about precisely what mindsets are all about. But just in summary, thank you for that question, is that what you find with people with a fixed mindset is that they tend to think that their ability, their intelligence is like implanted in them. So whatever intelligence they think they have, they think it's kind of in their genes. It's something which is hardwired into them, so that it can't be easily changed. Growth mindset, on the other side, think that intelligence can grow through effort. So the more we try, the more our intelligence can grow. So they have that belief. Now this means that, again, academically, when students face challenges, which they will do, of course, the fixed mindset will tend to give in a lot easier. They don't persist in the face of challenge. They tend to kind of throw in the towel. They say, I can't do this, I'm just not able to do it, that's just the way I am. Whereas with a growth mindset, those students tend to think, if I try, I can achieve. If I try, I can achieve. And that is something that we're going to come up on a little bit more after we've had a break. But thank you for asking that. I hope that gives you a little bit of idea of what that
so
is.
it's all about personal beliefs.
It is. You're absolutely 100% right. It is about beliefs. And it's strange, actually. Yeah, thank you. And it's strange, actually, how beliefs so change the way we behave. I'm going to come on to this even more, but before working on this work with Carol, or with the information from Carol Dweck, I've done lots of other work on this kind of thing, and how much it doesn't matter whether you're a student or whether you're a teacher or a principal head teacher in a school, or you're in business, you're working for Saudi Aramco, or you're working for let's say Shell, or you're working for a bank or a building society or anything at all, any industry. The beliefs that we have so influence our level of success. So you're absolutely right. It is about beliefs, and what is interesting with this is whether we can actually modify or help the student. If they have beliefs that are not helping them, can we change or help them to change their beliefs? And the answer is we can, as we're going to see a little bit later on now. So, let me tell you, in fact, we've got time just before the break, is what are mindsets? The question that we've just had from the ladies' side is very important. What is it that makes students with a growth mindset allow their intelligence to go up, whereas sometimes with a fixed mindset it might actually cause them to go down? Strange. So we need to know a little bit more about what mindsets are. We're going to break it about 15 minutes, just so you know. So, do you remember from the format system that I started out with, if you remember, I said why, then what, then how, and then if. What we've done first of all this morning is looked at why mindsets are important, why they're important for us to look at. Because the research is basically telling us that it's important. It's not just somebody thinking, I think it's important. The research tells us this. And when you come back tomorrow for the next stage, which is the visible learning, we'll see how it comes into the information from what's called visible learning as well. But what exactly are mindsets? Well, it's a bit like this. I don't know whether you've ever thought about the size of your brain, sometimes when I'm demonstrating this, and you might want to do this with students actually in your school, because you might not have an idea about the size of your brain. You know, as educators, we've got this thing inside our skulls, our heads, called the brain, and yet we know so little about it. And one thing we do know is in the last 30 years, our knowledge of the brain has multiplied, our knowledge about it has multiplied. So it's more now than it's been in the last 2,000 years. In the last 30 years, we've learned more about the brain than we knew over the previous 2,000 years. Through various scans that we can do on the brain now, through what, neuroscientists, psychologists have worked on brilliantly, are developing our knowledge of the brain all of the time. And one of the things that Carol Dweck says, and I think this is important, is the more that we can offer the students information about the way the brain works, the more they can actually understand it, obviously, and the more, therefore, they realise that actually they can have, if they want, the growth mindset. Because the brain is so complex. Now, I sometimes demonstrate this by putting some water into a plastic bag and then giving it to students, just to feel, because that feeling of something makes it more, it comes to life more than if we just give facts. And so, whether they are children that I've worked with back in England who are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or 11-year-old, in other words, they're at their junior school level, as we call it in England, or whether they're senior students of 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, you can do this because it is an interesting thing. How much water would you have to put into the bag to do this, right? Now, when a baby is first born, it has a brain of 1 pound. Now, 1 pound, if any of you know what 1 pound is in kilos, do you know? How many is it? Do you know what a pound is in kilos? Grams, in other words, or kilos. It's less than half a kilo, okay? So 1 pound is less than half a kilo. When a baby is born, its brain is already quite substantial. If you pour into a bag, a plastic bag like I said, you poured into a plastic bag just 1 pound, or slightly less than half a kilo, then you will have the weight of the baby's brain. Okay? And it's quite interesting for people just to feel this. I've done this with some teachers as well, where they have just had a baby. They might be a lady who's just had a baby, or a gentleman whose wife has just had a baby. And when they feel it, you say, that's the size of your baby's brain when it was first born. It's quite an experience, actually, and children like it as well to feel it. But by the time we get to your age, and my age, because we've all got about the same size brain, so your brains here are all about the same size. Not much difference. And you might think that you're more intelligent than me, and you've got a bigger brain, but I have to tell you haven't. Right? We've all got about the same size brain, okay? And the actual size of the brain doesn't seem to affect too much our ability to become smart, to be able to do things well. It's not really the physical size of it that seems to impact. It's what we do with this thing. How big is it, do you think? Because it does grow. How many pounds do you think it might get to, or kilos do you think, by the time it gets to your age? Anybody guess? Yes. Go on, sir.
Have a guess. I want you just to guess. Go on, please do. How much, what is it, compared to a baby's brain, what's an adult brain? Maybe 2 or 3 times this.
Yeah? I put you on the spot there, didn't I? But I could see you were confident enough to be able to face that challenge. By the time you get to our age, our brain is 3 times the weight of the baby's brain. Roughly speaking, right? It's around about 3 times the weight. So it's somewhat less than 1.5 kilos. That's pretty substantial, actually. If you were to pour 1.5 kilos of water, or slightly less than, into a plastic bag and feel it, it's quite substantial, actually. And inside that brain, it's quite interesting. Abdullah, is it possible to just bring that? I think it might be easier if we bring the board just round here. If that's possible, I'll help you. Just this board here. Just bring it round. I'll bring it round with you. Thanks. Just bring it round the front if we can. Thank you. So if I just put this here, and ladies, I'm not sure you'll be able to see this. Can you see this board, ladies, or not? No. Maybe you can't see it, so I'll explain to the ladies what I'm going to do as I do. Thanks, that's great. Can you all see this, gentlemen? Yeah, and you can see it over here, and hopefully down below there you can see it there as well. Your brain and my brain is a bit like this. So if I just show you, I'm going to try. Now I'm going to try, right? So I've got a growth mindset about drawing, okay? So I'm going to try my best. So, there we are. There say is your head, okay? And inside your head is this thing that we call the brain, this magnificent instrument, organ that we call the brain. Fantastic thing, the brain that's inside our head. Inside our head, we have inside the brain 86 billion neurons. 86 billion neurons. People talk about 100 billion. 100 is near to 86 billion, but 86 is more accurate. 86 billion neurons in your brain. So in that, if the equivalent in that plastic bag, we think of the plastic bag and we put 1.5 kilos, roughly speaking, in there. If that was the material in your brain, it would be 86 billion neurons or cells in your brain. Now each one of your cells in your brain is trying to make connections with other neurons. Every neuron is trying to make some connections. They like to make connections because connections are learning. So when a neuron makes a connection with another neuron, it's like little arms going out. And sometimes with children, how I demonstrate this is to get them, when they're all together, you know, sometimes let's get a lot of students together in the hall, and there might be 200 students, particularly if they're small and they're not concerned about doing this and feel happy to do it. I get them to hold hands, you know, with different students, just hold hands. And I say the students are little neurons, acting like neurons. They're making connections, and when they make a connection, it's a new piece of learning. Now, the capacity of our learning is phenomenal. 86 billion neurons. Each of your neurons can make up to 10,000 connections. Each neuron can make 10,000 connections. You know, sometimes things in life are so amazing it's hard to believe, but the capacity of these connections, and remember every connection is a new piece of learning. And the more we learn things and the more we go over things as well, like when you revise, the stronger those connections can become. So they become more efficient and effective at the learning that's taken place. The more we repeat it, the more we kind of think about it, revise it and so on. But we make connections which are pieces of learning. 86 billion neurons, 10,000 connections, up to 10,000 connections can be made between one neuron and any other neurons, right? If you were to take all of the connections that can be made in your brain and line them up in a straight line, because the little distances between one neuron and another one, so the connection bit that's connecting one to another, if we were to take all the connections and put them into a straight line, how far do you think you'd get? just call out and turn your thing off if you want to guess. How do you get the question I'm asking? If you were to take all the neurons in your own brain, the connections between them, and almost like bits of string, tie them all together, or connect them all together, how far do you think you'd get? Have a guess. Just like when who did I choose to pick on down here? I picked on somebody. Who was it? Was it you, sir? Was it you? No. Did I pick on you? I'm not going to come back to you, right? But I'm going to pick on somebody. If you don't tell me, I will do it. Anybody tell me, how far do you think you'd get? Go on, guess. Just guess. You don't know, so it's just a guess. Not quite, no, because what I'm saying here is you've got 86 billion neurons. Billion. And each one of those is trying to make connections with other neurons, right? So it's just trying to make connections. Every single one. And every single one can make up to 10,000 connections, right? Let's not go into that at the moment, right? I'll have to talk to you later about what you mean by active, but they make connections between the neurons, right? Yeah. They make connections. Now, if we imagine those to be like little bits of string, they're not, of course, but we imagine that they have a certain length. If you were to connect all of those connections together, let me tell you, does anybody want to guess? How far are you going to get? You know what? This is very interesting, actually, because you're all brilliant people. You've all got the brilliant growth mindset, certainly by the end of the day you will. You've all got the capacity to do great stuff. And yet you are reluctant to give this answer, aren't you? Why is that? Don't answer the question. Why do you think it's don't answer the distance question, but can you tell me why you think we're all reluctant? And I would be as well if I was sitting with you. Why are we reluctant to give an answer? Can you tell me? Yeah. So what I'm saying is, why is it that you people who've all achieved very well are reluctant to give an answer? Yeah. Can you turn that on and just say that if you don't mind?
Maybe we are afraid to make a mistake.
Would you agree, folks?
Not giving the right question.
Right.
The right story answer.
Absolutely. You're absolutely, I believe that's exactly right. We're often afraid to give an answer because we don't want to make a mistake. Correct? 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 And this is where it's a bit of fixed mindset. Right? Because with a growth mindset, we don't mind making mistakes. The more we have a fixed mindset, the more we are reluctant to do something if we think we might get it wrong. Because we might look silly, or we might give the wrong answer. Remember that as we think further about this, by the way. Because I've done this kind of thing with thousands of people now. In fact, just coming here in Saudi Arabia over the last 2 weeks, I've been with thousands of people like yourself. Literally, from the different things that we've done. It's been, I'm not sure exactly what the figure is, but we've had 200 here today, there's been 300, there's been 150 at different groups. It's always the same. People are reluctant to give answers. And the reason I suggest this, because we are reluctant to give an answer in case we make a mistake. And students are like that as well. Yeah, even perhaps more so. Maybe, I don't know, maybe more so or maybe not. But students in your classes will often not want to give an answer because they're afraid of making a mistake. Right? It's true. And that will hold back their learning. That very thing will hold back their learning. Right, I'm going to give you the answer. Right? You would get, if you put all of your connections together into a straight line, you'll be able to get to the sun and back 6 times. So you'd be able to, if you could string them all together, there would be the distance to get to the sun and back 6 times. Pretty astonishing. In your head, the neurons and the potential connections in your brain could get you to the sun and back 6 times. Is that amazing? It is amazing, isn't it? So our adult brain is like this. Basically, Carol Dweck says with our self-theory, it's like this. And see how much, by the way, just that very thing of asking you that question fits with what I'm going to tell you, and then we're going to have a break, okay? It's like this. Fixed mindsets think their ability, they would say, my ability comes from my talent. It's what's in my genes. Now the consequence of that is, when times get tough and obstacles come along, students like this person tends to give in. You have students like that, correct? Correct? Do you have students like that? Yes. In your classes, in every single classroom probably around, there are going to be some students who are more like this. But there are also some students who are like this, with a growth mindset. And their mindset is like this. They think that my ability comes from effort that I put into learning. They believe that it's effort that will get them success. And therefore, when obstacles come along and when times get tough, this person tries even harder. And they're not bothered about making mistakes. So hopefully you will have some students like that as well. Do you? That when they meet obstacles, they just think, it's an obstacle. I just need to try harder. I'll find some other ways of doing it. In fact, just to illustrate further with this, a little bit more information just to give you. Fixed mindsets believe then, as we've said, intelligence and ability are fixed. And they seek support, they reject support rather, they refuse support when things go wrong. And they just say, I can't do it. Have you had students like that? I can't learn English. Have you had students like that? It's just the way I am. Look, you can try to teach me as much as you like, but I can't do it, right? I just can't do it. They're wrong. They're wrong because they have 86 billion neurons in their brain trying to make connections. It's not something, language, like learning the English language, that one person can do and another person can't do. One person might be able to do it a little bit quicker. True. But we can all do it. We can all do it. And this is one of the things with this, that the more they know about their brain, even just what I just told you there, 86 billion neurons that make 10,000 connections, you can say to them, there's nothing magical that makes one person do it and another person not. It's the way you use your brain. So with fixed mindsets, they say things like, I'm hopeless at languages. I just can't learn them. And when they do things, they think that they try to do things with little effort because they think it makes them look clever. Again, I'm sure that you feel that the students like that you teach, that associate trying as not being clever at something. They think trying means they're not clever. Have you got students like that? Good. I'm not saying good that you've got students like that. I'm saying good that you've actually, you're thinking about it and you realise that there are some students like this. They think that if you have difficulties, you must be bright. They associate difficulties with not being bright. Load of rubbish. It's rubbish because we all have difficulties. Have you had difficulties? Have you struggled with things at times when you've been learning stuff? Of course we do. And the struggle is what we need to do in order to learn things. And when things go wrong, this is also interesting. Guess who they blame? Who do they blame, sir? Probably you. Yeah? Because they'll say it's your fault. You're not teaching me well, right? I'm sure they don't with you, because I'm sure you're very, very great at what you do. But you know what I'm saying? The student can start to blame the teacher. They can start to blame the school. They blame their parents and say, it's my parents' fault. They never helped me. They blame everybody. Even they blame themselves and say, it's my, I just can't do it. They blame anything because what they want to do is disown responsibility. They don't like to have responsibility, so they disown responsibility. Do you get what I'm saying? So let's look at growth mindsets and see the difference. What Carol Dweck has found is this. Growth mindsets believe that intelligence and ability can grow. That's what's inside the head. They have this belief. They have this belief. It's like a magical belief. It's just a belief. Right? It's not based upon necessarily any research they've got. It's based upon belief. And we can try to help them to get this belief as we go on to look at after the break. And these students tend to seek support when things go wrong, and they say, if I try more, I can succeed. I will succeed, or at the very least, I think I can have a good chance of succeeding. They may say things like, I'm not good at languages yet. That magical word again, yet. But I can learn them. So if a student is not good at English at the moment, please don't, I'd ask you to think about this, and I'd suggest, don't tell them that they are good. Right? So if a student says, I'm not good at English, I'm not good at English, you can say to them, I appreciate it at the moment that you've not achieved a great level. You've not got to a great level. But that's now. It's yet. For the future, you can do it. If you really want to, it's up to you. They have to make the choice. Do they literally give in, or are they going to say, I can improve if I go forward? And they like challenge. They want to learn. These students want to learn. They like challenge. And they think that difficulties are interesting and that they can be overcome by changing strategies. Does this make sense? And finally, when things go wrong, they don't blame you. They don't blame themselves. They don't blame their parents. They don't blame the school. They don't blame the weather. Right? In England, we blame the weather all the time for all sorts of things. I can see here that probably you can do the same, with the weather at the moment. But they blame anything. They blame the people who have a fixed mindset. But these students don't. They don't blame. They don't look at blame. It's not about blame. They think that difficulties are in fact inevitable, and they are. Einstein was brilliant, but he had difficulties. He showed great brilliance, but he had difficulties. People who are successful have difficulties, but they overcome the difficulties, and they can be a catalyst for them to find out more. You only had 2 fears when you were born. Number 1, loud noises. Children are afraid of loud noises. Secondly, they're afraid of falling over. And beyond that, they're really not born with fears. But as we get older, we start to get fears. We fear sometimes that we're not very intelligent, that we can't do things. We fear all sorts of things. In England, the top fears are spiders and public speaking. So people are most afraid of it. When surveys are being done, often it comes out as spiders and public speaking. They're afraid of spiders beyond dying. Sounds a bit crazy, doesn't it? But you're not kind of afraid of, obviously everybody doesn't want to die, but they're not having a fear of that because they think it's kind of inevitable one day. But spiders, frightened. Public speaking, like I'm doing with you now, frightened of that. Now, what we're going to do after the break is this. We're going to look at if we believe that students with a growth mindset here, that it's most beneficial to kind of have our students have a growth mindset. how do we get them here? Because some students will be having a fixed mindset over here. Are you with me? And if we have like this as a spectrum from growth to fixed, there will be students that kind of go along the spectrum. Like you have today with your the questionnaire that you did, those 16 questions or statements. Do you remember? You will have different places that you are along here. And so are students. What I'm going to say to you is, in education, the more we can encourage them that this is the best place to be, and that they can be over here if they want to be, the more we're going to help them. Okay? There's about 50% of students in general over that side, and 50% over that side. And of course, again, it's a spectrum, so they'll be at different places, but 50% of students will lean towards growth mindsets. 50% of students will lean towards fixed mindsets. You and I, you as educators, if we want to, we can encourage students to come over there. And what we're going to look at after the break is exactly that. Is that okay? Looking forward to that? Good. I'm looking forward to it as well. However, now, Abdullah, can I ask you if you just hold this for me, if you don't mind? My great colleague Abdullah is from the British Council. Thank you, Abdullah. I'm just going to ask you if you can follow my instructions, okay? And see how well you can follow these instructions before you go for your break, okay? If you can do this, you can go for a break. If not, we just continue. So I hope you're feeling that you need to do this. Hands out, please, like this. Just follow my instructions. Just follow my instructions. Exactly. Okay? Clap hands. Clap hands. Turn your hands upside down like that. Right? You've got your hands like that. Facing outwards like that. Put your right hand over your left hand and grip your fingers together. And touch these the four fingers, please put them together like this. And can you make sure that your right thumb is below the left thumb? So your right thumb needs to be below the left. Right? The right below the left? The right below the left, sir. That's it, you've got it. Well done. So, what I'd like you now to do, if you can, is this. If you followed me precisely, do that. Oh, come on! Come on, folks, I thought you could do that. You must have a fixed mindset. No, it's only a joke, okay. Right, we're going to have a break, and we'll come back after the break. Can we have a 15-minute break, so we'll come back at 22? Is that okay? Thank you.